Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Podcast. It's episode 23 of a show about board games. And I'm joined by Barry to talk about board games.
Hello, hello. Back again.
It rolls on. It rolls on. But we've got an exciting new innovation this episode.
Something new, something exciting.
Yeah, I've put some notes in that happened before the news.
There we go, yeah. No longer is it my 5-minute roundup. But lasts for half an hour.
Instead, I've reminded myself to say, if you all watched part 1 of the Elder Scrolls gameplay series on the YouTube channel, the part 2 is done. I finished the first cut. I'm just checking it. It will be out soon, so that's very exciting. If you're at all interested in the game, if you've just received your copy, if you're getting your copy soon, you can come and check it out. Of course, you'll want to see part 1 first because it's got all the actual rules and structure in it, and that'll help you get into the game and sort of understand how it flows. But if you did watch part 1 and you enjoyed it, part 2 coming very soon.
Well, if you ever listen to me talking about games, you'll know that rules aren't important at all. You wing it, and then just hope.
I mean, the rule book might as well just be like a sort of a vibe, right?
Yeah, no, it's a suggestion.
And of course, I will be heading off to Airecon in a couple of weeks. I'm still debating what to take with me. Top of my list, the one thing that actually everyone's been asking for is Eclipse 2nd edition. That seems to have become a sort of a regular staple of Airecon every year for whatever reason. So Eclipse, I'll probably end up bringing Cthulhu Wars, Guards of Atlantis 2, and I think I'd quite like to bring Eastern Western Empires. Yeah, the ones that form mega empires, just because that'd be good to get to the table, but I don't know if I'll have time to prep that, or get a big group together either. The point of bringing it to the con would be to get sort of double figure players. But I just, that'll take some organizing, I think, and I don't know if I'll be able to get it together, but we'll see. I'll give it a go.
Oh, well, good luck. Eclipse was, I enjoy Eclipse, although my game group ended up getting rid of it. Don't know why. It's like we played it more often than most of our other games. Why would you sell this one?
Yeah, actually, one of the few games I did get to play at Barry's house with Barry and the games group. From what I can recall, we lost that game because we decided to attack each other instead of the person who was winning.
Doesn't matter. Just a suggestion.
Exactly. We had our own fun, and in a way, didn't we win, really? Isn't that winning?
Yeah, maybe the real winners are the battles we had along the way.
But I'm very excited for Airecon. It's always a great convention, so I'm very excited to go along to this one again. Well, to go along again this year and just play some games. I mean, literally, we just settle on a table in there and we just game for 3 days straight. So it's brilliant. So very excited for that. And if you're going to be there, make sure you say hi. Leave a note or leave a comment down below. Let us know what you're bringing, what you're looking forward to playing. There was one guy who posted on the Airecon group that they were dead keen to find a partner for War of the Ring 2nd edition. So if you fancy that, make sure you engage on the Facebooks to get some games organized. I personally can't imagine going to a huge convention like Airecon and playing a 2-player game that lasts, that many hours. But if you really, really like Lord of the Rings and you really like War of the Ring and you can't find anyone in your locale to play with, then I guess I can understand.
Some people only play one game, or almost exclusively one game, and proper lifestyle gamers. I'm not talking lifestyle games like the Netrunners and Games of Thrones and Magics of this world. I mean, they will play. They are just Twilight Imperium players, or they are just War of the Ring players, and they never branch.
Well, it's true, and actually, I mean, I don't know anyone that's necessarily so focused on a game like that, but I do know people who play like sort of one game a lot, and that game sort of remains in their rotation and is played a lot more frequently than other games, and as other games are cycled out, this one game remains in play. I would like to be more like that, honestly, and just get better at sort of like the really good games and play them more often. And to an extent, I mean, part of the reason I'm not is because I'm an omni gamer and I like everything, so, I'll be playing Brass Birmingham one day and then the next day I'm just mad excited to play For Science, to just pull on a game that couldn't be less like Brass Birmingham. But also it's, partly also the YouTubes and stuff. We have to talk about the new things, let you know if there's anything worth looking at. And speaking of which, what's in the news, Barry? Is there anything worth looking at?
There are many things worth looking at, some more than others, but all depends what you're into. So one thing that came across my radar these last couple of weeks is a very small game, a new roll and write from a fairly unknown designer, Daniil Zaitsev. Previously designed a game called Friendly Clouds, which is a dexterity party game back in 2019. Don't think it set the world on fire, never heard of it, never seen it. But this is a game called Arkham Travel Guide, and it is a roll and write set in the world of Arkham and Arkham Horror, but not an Arkham Files game, just making use of the Mythos IP. And it is an odd choice of mechanisms to try and convey horror. Rolling a dice and drawing into your town to try and navigate the streets and avoid the cataclysms and the monsters as you go seems a different choice as to how grandiose and miniature led a lot of the Cthulhu games are. But the one image of the game shows it with like a deck of cards and a blister pack and the notepads behind it to fill in these townships and your escape routes and whatever. And the theme piqued my interest, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on that until some more information comes out, maybe some how to plays, and eventually gets released.
Do you like roll and writes?
I do like roll and writes. I like combo based roll and writes. So like the Ganshun Clever games are still potentially the gold standard of very abstract, but yeah, that was fun to do. The first Ganshun Clever I maxed out a couple of times. There is a maximum score in that. But so you've got a very rote way of playing. However, 2, 3, and 4, so Doppelt, Clever Forever. What's the third one called? Can't remember. But they all have there's no optimal path, or at least a far less optimal path to max out your score. And I just like ticking a box, and then that lets you do something else, and then that lets you do something else. I'm very reminiscent of a game I played for the first time this week, Planet Unknown, which I'd never had a go off before, but as you move up the tracks and you get to combo off little PCs, unlock little bits of technology, anything like that.
So have you played Cascadero yet? You would very much.
I've
like
not played
that.
Cascadero.
The tracks in Cascadero are very reminiscent of the tracks in Planet Unknown. Of course, in Planet Unknown, you've got the polyomino game with the Lazy Susan. And in Cascadero, it's a much more basic.
Yeah.
I say tile laying, but you're placing a meeple. Meeple placing game. Route building, I guess.
Fine. But games like so the Flip and Writes, the Welcome to and Welcome to the Moon campaign, that's kind of the ones that I've kept, but I've tried Hex Roller, Quinto, Quicks, 2 X's, a whole bunch of these sort of more abstract ones. Cartographers, I don't like as much for some reason.
Yeah, we talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, but
yeah, I mean, I would describe myself as really not a big fan of roll and write. So I've got much less experience, I imagine, than you do with the genre. And actually, the ones I really like, would like Welcome to and Cartographers are Flip and Write. Don't know if that necessarily makes any difference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, yes, we can get into the mechanical differences between dice and cards if you'd like, but like functionally, they're still very solo affairs. They tend to be puzzle solving things. You're sort of looking at ways to optimize scores, and to an extent, what Welcome to and Cartographers both have in common, I suppose, is that there's some moment in the game where you can sabotage your opponents. Actually, I don't know if you can in Welcome to. I'm thinking of Welcome to the Moon. I did play through the campaign.
You can I forget what it is, like the roadworks type thing forces your opponent to do something.
I seem to recall there was some way to impact your opponent's setup. And certainly there are many ways to do that in Welcome to the Moon, which I played through all of and enjoyed. I liked that very much. But, you know, I can take them with a sort of I have a limited capacity for them, and I just start to get itchy after a while, and I want to play something more.
You want something a bit more tactile, something to move around.
Yeah, I want something more interactive, you know? Something where I feel like I've been playing with other people a bit more. I played the fishing one that everyone really liked. God, what was that called?
Bargain Basement Bathysphere. I've got that still, yeah.
Bargain Basement Bathysphere.
Oh, is that not what we're talking about? So, and it's only kind of a roll and write as well, but I suppose you roll the dice and then you choose how deep you're going and what spaces you're stopping on. I guess
I'm thinking of like a Fleet the dice game.
Yeah. In fact, I've seen you play that.
And I was like, no, not for me.
If you've not played Bargain Basement Bathysphere, it's only single player, so you don't have to worry about the interactiveness. It's fun, but the WizKids version is... They've had to make a lot of concessions to package it up, whereas it's just a print and play that you can download for free and get like 40 missions from the Board Game Geek forums. I would recommend doing that over buying the retail version.
Well, there you go. So if you're interested in some roll and write stuff, and this is not FFG then, is it?
No, it's just Lovecraftian rather than Arkham Files.
Because we were talking last week about what games do FFG even make anymore, and none. Yeah,
none.
But also, we did mention one on the podcast. I mentioned one on the podcast. I then went to look to see if we could talk about it, and we couldn't. So I had to cut it out. So there's a little hint for all of you folks out there, if you're listening. There is an FFG game coming out, which we will talk about at some stage, but actually it hasn't technically been announced yet, so we couldn't. So sorry about that.
Secrets.
But I guess I spilled the beans to Barry, and the FFG police are coming around with the NDA to silence me.
And the big sticks. FFG don't have enough staff to enforce an NDA. Come on.
No one works there anymore.
Yeah. Two people.
They're just turning off the card printing machines. That's all they're there for. I've made myself sad. Let's move on to the next thing. I've got some news articles this week, so I'll jump in with one, which is the Inish Big Box. So this is going to be a Kickstarter campaign run by Colossal, and it's Inish, so it's the Madigo is the publisher of Inish, designed by Christian Martinez, and this is a new expansion plus big boxification. So you may well know about Inish Seasons, which was the first expansion. Now this is a new expansion called Nemed, which I'm sure I've said wrong because it's probably got some Celtic pronunciation, so I apologize for my cultural insensitivity. And Nemed promises to be a deeper dive into Celtic folklore. So, as far as I can recall, the sanctuaries are a building you build in Inish. They're one of the victory conditions. And now there will be a way to use the sanctuaries as sort of temples to summon special figures who will be gods and heroes of folklore. And then you will pay an ongoing cost to have them on your team. And they'll be sort of like soldiers with asymmetrical powers. That's what I understand. There's also something called the Nemeton Ceremony, which is based around a Celtic sort of ruins, and you can engage with this Nemeton Ceremony mechanism to unlock what are called powerful Nemeton deeds. If we remember Inish at all, we know that the deed tokens are awarded for card play and things like that, and they count towards they're a wild victory condition, so they help you to win. So now you can get I guess better versions of those. Unclear on any more of the mechanisms. It hasn't launched yet, but there will be a big box, and you should be able to pick up Nemed, the big box, or All In as part of the campaign, which is coming soon on Kickstarter. Do you like Inish, Barry?
I do. I don't love it. I'll play it. And I've only played it 3-4 times. Like, I don't know the depth of it. I'm sure the more you play it and the more you try and achieve the different paths to victory and learn how to adapt to what other people are doing and choosing. And I do like the the drafting part where you're kind of choosing your powers for the turn and seeing how that plays out or fails to play out based on your choices and what other people are doing. So, and my friend does have the expansion. We've never played it. Just always stuck with the core game. I don't know whether they'll pick up this big box or not.
So I've played, by my standards, a lot of Inish. By the standards of people that play the same game many times, not much. But I have played base game Inish a bunch, maybe 4 or 5 times. And I've played the expansion Seasons 3 or 4 times as well. And what Seasons adds is this we need a king mechanism to try to bring down the game length, because the thing about Inish is it can be over very, very quickly, especially if you're playing with new players that don't necessarily know the political side of the game, the table talk side of the game, or it can go on all night if everyone's really, really good at thwarting each other. So Inish can be like a 60-minute to 3-hour game. So they've tried to sort of stabilize or streamline that, stabilize. They've tried to regulate that with the We Need a King expansion from Seasons. Seasons also adds harbors, which allow for more adjacent terrain, so easier travel along terrain, leading less to people sort of exploring off in one long beeline to create this crazy big map. And it also adds seasons, and there's this every round this season counter goes around and activates summer, winter, fall, and each one has a special effect.
I maybe have
and of the whole thing, Harbors is fine. I think it's quite good because just more adjacency is better. It leads to more player interaction and less of this sort of issue with the map getting like untraversable if people explore it in weird ways. Seasons is rubbish. It's just a bunch of faff. Everyone always forgets to do them. And there's a whole bunch of text that you have to read and people just forget about it. I wouldn't bother with Seasons at all. It's unnecessary overhead for no real benefit as far as I'm concerned. Maybe you've got different experiences. Feel free to comment on the podcast. And then We Need a King, which is so essential that everyone prints it off, even if they don't buy the whole box. And it's so easy to implement. It's literally just a token that you get. I believe the deal is something, I can't remember the exact rules, but this is going to make only sense to people who know Inish. But the idea is if you are lined up to win and then you are stopped from winning, I can't remember exactly how it works, actually. If you're prevented from winning by dint of like not being the Bren or something like that, you get like a special token. And the next time you would win, but you're not the Bren, then you win anyway, something like that. Or maybe there's a token that flips over and it just makes it easier to qualify for winning. But it just kind of helps escalate that sort of end game state and ratchet up the end game conditions. It makes the game shorter. I'm not sure how I feel about the We Need a King module because I do think the game desperately needed it, but my experience has been that actually it makes it almost too abrupt, particularly with that new player problem. Like I spoke of earlier, you'd have some new players at the table who would maybe not understand the table talk and how you sort of have to stop people, or maybe they just don't understand the nuance of the card draft yet. And, one of the big parts of Inish is that you can just pass. But if everybody passes, the round's over. So you can play for time and then start playing cards after everyone's sort of effectively out of the round because they've played all their cards and try to chalk up a victory condition by being sneaky like that, provided everyone doesn't pass. And so though that there's those kinds of gameplay elements in Inish, and the We Need a King module can just escalate that to the point where the game is just really short and then it's just over and new players are kind of like, oh, that's it. Like we set up and learned all the rules and that was it.
I definitely recall playing one game back to back because somebody got the 6 cities or the 6 dudes in the same city. I can't remember what the win condition is.
7, isn't it? I think it's 7s.
Could be something like that. They got to 6 or 7 and nobody could stop them after like a couple of turns, and it was just like, oh,
yeah.
Okay,
well, and you know, it can be short enough that you can do that. I like Inish well enough. I'll probably pick up the new expansion. I've still got my copy, and as far as a sort of a dudes on a map game that's quite teachable, I do enjoy it. So, and I have that original first print box art that everyone hated, you know, with the Ginger Warrior on the front.
I think I've only ever seen the first print. You tell me there's...
They did a second print box which had sort of green art, and they redid the characters. So it looks like the same style, but it's not the same picture. But I really like that original box art. Yeah, I think it looks cool.
See on Board Game Geek.
So I don't want the big box. I'm just not... It all fits in this core box anyway. Like, what is Nemed going to be so big? Like, I can't just find room for it.
Somebody will make an insert.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what you got for us?
Yep, nice one. So, board game adjacent for this one, Mr. President. Right, so this is the American presidency, 2001 to 2020, published by GMT Games, and it was something I picked up, I want to say, potentially April last year, maybe after then, I'm not sure. And I've not played it, and I'm getting rid of it. And the reason is, it's a solo game. You can play with somebody as like vice president, but basically they're just looking things up for you and advising on different areas. There's the game, as far as I can tell, because I've not played it, is a lot of crises are happening around the world. You've got a lot of things to juggle, but the resolution for which is a lot of looking up your dossiers and figuring out what your best moves are to move up different tracks, to balance not going into, you know, nuclear war or all-out aggression, or to get the right diplomacy and all this kind of thing. And there's like 6 different books, which is, if not the core of the game, because there's a lot of other components, at least a big part of the game to do it. And I think I may have discussed in a previous podcast, I'm just over looking up tables as part of a non-war game system. However, I did think this would be better if a lot of this was automated for me, and the game is coming to at least Steam, so at least PC, sometime pretty soon. Be on available now to wishlist, and if I might take whatever I make from selling the game and purchase the PC game instead, and rely on that to do the administrative work and hopefully present the game in a way that doesn't feel like it's looking up 4 or 5 different books to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I actually did see Mr. President was being released on Steam, and who knows, maybe if you pick it up, I'll pick it up too, and then we can compare notes.
We can't play
it's
together.
It's not a game that is... Yeah, it's not a game that's... Well, I also don't want that vice president role. Like, who would want that?
Yeah, Mike, go look up that Indochina book, page 42, please, and tell me what.
I'll be as useless as... I'll have about as much agency as a real vice president. No thanks. But, yeah, so, you know, not the kind of game that normally appeals to me, although I'm a very sort of politically engaged person. Just a sort of a big, long solo game is not really my bag. But yeah, especially if it's on Steam, I'll definitely check it out.
What else you got?
All right. So this was something I learned about earlier in the months bygone, but finally the embargo has been lifted, I assume, because it's appeared on BGG. I actually remember them outlining an embargo date, and I forgot the embargo date, which is, of course, par for the course for my journalistic integrity. But it appears on BGG, so I'm not sharing anything with you that you can't just find out. It's 2001 A Space Odyssey, the board game, designed by Phil Walker Harding, who we know as the designer of Sushi Go, Baron Park, and the Super Mega Lucky Box. And this is a 3 to 5 player game. It's a one versus many, in which one player is Hal, the ship's computer that goes nuts in the movie, if you all remember that, and everyone else is trying to complete logic puzzles to shut Hal down before Hal turns off life support and kills them all. Game's supposed to be 30 minutes long, and it proudly announced it does not feature AI art, despite one player playing as an AI that's gone haywire. So I don't know how you feel about Phil Walker Harding's offerings, or whether this sort of departure into sort of more multiplayer games, and or if this theme does anything for you, Barry.
So Phil Walker Harding, I'd argue I'm a big fan, right? Sushi Go party version in particular, great. Tile laying Cacao, I'd rather play than Carcassonne. Barren Park, probably still my preferred polyomino tile layer game. Llama Land was a big miss for me. Got rid of that quite quickly. We've played My Shelfie. It's okay.
It's okay.
And I've not got around to playing Cities yet. He did Planted as well, which is an entirely middle of the road drafting game as well. So he's got some highs. He doesn't have anything I think's super terrible. I just didn't like Llama Land compared to Barren Park, for example. He did Gizmos as well. Love Gizmos.
Is that the one with the marbles that drop out the thing and activate the tableau?
Yeah, it's like...
Oh yeah, that was good. I liked that a lot.
Like sort of bare bones engine builder. Really good. So yes, as a designer, yes, I think I'd be interested in what he's doing. The theme, I mean, we're a little past... I have to assume that whatever game he's made is so intrinsically tied to the theme that they couldn't do it without it, because it's not really that big a draw. As great as the movie is, just the timing seems odd. I'm sure the license is also pretty cheap, which will probably help.
There was a AI board game that came out a couple of years ago, which was this exact theme. I can't remember what it was called. I think it could very well have been 2001: Space Odyssey, the board game, and then they just renamed it something else because they didn't have the license, couldn't get it, or they just thought it's not worth the trouble. But I can't for the life of me remember what it is. So come back to me on that, maybe.
Will do. And then, but I guess my main thoughts about it is the one versus many aspect. So one player playing Hal against the astronauts themselves. One versus many used to be my jam. You know, back in Hero Quest, Space Crusade, I was always the one, because they were my games, if nothing else. And I loved running the game, and I loved going up against the other players. Less so these days, I think, with the advent of sort of more advanced automa within board games, whether that's controlled through a deck of cards, through dice. I'd even take through apps, although the only app game I kind of kept is Mansions of Madness. Oh, there's a news story. Mansions of Madness, brand new expansion. But, well,
yeah,
thingy on the...
Yeah, we'll have to
I'll talk about that in a
talk
minute.
about that in due course, yeah.
But that was taken over. So Mansions of Madness first edition was one versus many. The second edition uses the app to control the game, and so everybody's playing collaboratively together. So again, unless it's all tied into the theme and very well balanced, because the one thing I find with one versus many is either as the one, you have to rein yourself in a bit so other people can have fun, or you're so ineffectual you're not having any fun. That balance is very hard to do. So we'll see. I'm not wildly against it, but I'm not immediately drawn to it.
Yeah, I think this largely taps into... I mean, you know, I like 2001: A Space Odyssey a lot. I think it's a very cool movie. I don't have any desire to play a board game of it. I even think insofar as, you know, setting up a sort of haywire space computer, that's not even the main draw of the movie, really, is Hal's logical breakdown, you know? at least, in what I take away from the movie. It's a part of, I suppose, the themes the film is exploring, but it's not a film really about man versus machine.
It's about a space baby
at its core. It's about a space baby. So yeah, so it seems kind of like, a strange sort of part of the film to focus on and zone in on. I also don't recall a team of astronauts fighting Hal, but maybe I'm misremembering the film. I have also got mixed feelings about One versus Many. I just think I think I spoke about this in the final thoughts for Conan the Barbarian game, which we covered on the channel like 7 years ago. And it's very, very, very difficult to make one player's role competitive with the role of 4 players. And you see it over and over again. It's like either the one has to be so nerfed that their role is no longer a really compelling puzzle, or then it's the inverse. The 4 or the number of other players are so nerfed that their individual decision making is just not very interesting. And for what it's worth, I thought that the system they used in Conan that they later employed in Gotham City Chronicles was a decent enough system. It's just a shame that those games had other issues. In Conan, we found the scenario design to be somewhat lacking, and especially the monster design to be not very. It was all about shutting down agency and things like that, which was not very interesting. And then in Gotham City Chronicles, it was just an impenetrable amount of iconography. It also played best at 2, which is kind of, missing. Not like, why not just make it a head-to-head game then? So it's just it's sort of a hard mode to balance. So I don't know. We'll see. If it's only supposed to be 30 minutes, and I think at that length, you can probably get away with a lot more than you can in these sort of bigger games that want to be longer. I cannot remember the name of the sci-fi game that came out 2 years ago that was about the same sort of thing, an AI's gone mad on the ship. Hello, Editor Mike here, just jumping in to say the game I was thinking of was Adele from 2021, which is a one versus many game that sees players playing off against an AI trying to destroy them on a ship. Designed by Albert Reyes and published by DMZ Games. We still don't know Barry's Blackjack Adventure game either, so if you have any comments on that, stick it in the comments or email us, askreadysteadypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what we're talking about. Back to you, Barry.
Nice.
For the next story.
I'll throw in the unexpected news of the week, which is an additional DLC for Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, a game everybody thought was long done and dusted. So Mansions of Madness has 7 boxed expansions, which contain a number of minis, but it also has 20 adventures, 15 of which are downloadable through the app, because it's all controlled via an app that will tell you what pieces to put out, what the enemies do. You would input your codes and stuff into the app. But there'd been nothing new for a number of years, so the assumption was it had been shut down with the Path of the Serpents, or whatever the last box was, along with Elder Signs, which is the Yahtzee cooperative dice chucking game set within the Arkham Files universe, and the Lord of the Rings one, Journeys of Middle-earth, all seem to have been wrapped up. And then there was a surprise announcement that there is a new DLC mission. When that's going to be in the store, unclear, but hopefully fairly soon. And that's given rise to a lot of speculation about whether things might be making a little bit of a comeback, whether that may involve new physical products, whether the other long thought abandoned games might be getting some kind of update, again with physical product, or what this means for the game as a whole. So if you have played the game to death and you have played all the missions multiple times, seen all the different ways to get to the end, there is a fan-made system, Valkyrie, which you can download for Steam and make your own missions. I tried it once.
Oh, cool.
It was awful.
Oh,
So the release of new content. Actually, not that I've played all the missions yet. Like every Halloween, I want to bust it out for the day's play. As part of the spooky games. But I tried making my own quest, and it was for my own mission. It was awful. People keep talking about Valkyrie being, oh yeah, this is good. I don't know how. None of the missions I downloaded were good. The ones I tried to make were not good. Maybe I'm just not good at it, or don't know what I'm doing. But any official content is welcome, and I do hope that does mean there's more stuff coming for some of the other abandoned games in the line. Same with what's the Imperial Assault, the Star Wars one. I'd be less confident of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of three things I'd mention there. One is, I was just thinking, like, is this paving the way for a third edition? And that made me think, oh yeah, the first edition was one versus many, like we're just talking about, which was also not very good. It wasn't very much fun to be the villain in that. Which is why the app-driven second edition is generally more enjoyable. It's a game I've kept around. It's a very simple game, but it's a lot of fun. It's just very thematic. I think you have to somewhat want to engage with a puzzle that is potentially going to unfairly become unsolvable, and just kind of enjoy the experience. Which, once you have all the expansions, can be a whole afternoon. But I enjoy it. My partner enjoys playing it with me. We have not explored all the existing episodes, although we have done most of them. Albeit not all of them. I don't think there's one we haven't tried. There might be one we haven't tried. It's actually, whenever I go back to it, I forget what we haven't played. So we'll be playing, and then a lot of them are very similar. So I'll be playing one. I'll be like, have we seen this before? Can't remember. But yeah, enjoyable. Always happy for, and actually, what I have noticed as well is I do think that the downloadable, the DLC, the paid ones are good. The ones I've paid to download, I've enjoyed as much, if not more, than some of the ones that you get for free when you buy the expansions. So, make of that what you will. But one could argue they're keeping the quality behind a paywall, which is a shame. But at least once you've paid, it's not disappointing.
Well, I hope to play it more, and perhaps even not just at Halloween.
Yep. And what I really want is for them to release an official make-your-own missions for Journeys in Middle-earth. I think the biggest problem with Journeys in Middle-earth is the terrible writing and the terrible adventures. And if you could just put that out there, FFG, so we could make our own Lord of the Rings adventures with all of the models that you've given us, that would be great. Thanks. Yeah. If you're not going to do it, just let us do it.
The difference between... so Journeys in Middle-earth and Imperial Assault are obviously licensed. They don't have the license to put that out there. They could feasibly do it for Mansions of Madness.
Well, I don't know what kind of license agreement they've got, but they can release the adventures.
Yeah.
So why not just release and make your own adventure? I want to write some lore. I don't want to do it. I would do it. Potentially I'd do it. But I'd really just like other people to do it.
I have
so that I can play.
I have some of the lore stuff for One Ring, and recently got the Moria expansion. I'm sure you could do something very cool with what's in there and turn it into a gym adventure.
I'm sure that there's loads of like Lord of the Rings nerds out there who are super across lore and could do some really interesting stuff with Journeys in Middle-earth and what's there. And I have played through, for Journeys in Middle-earth, the original campaign, the first DLC campaign, the Shadows of Moria or whatever it's called campaign, Shadows in the Dark, or what, I can't remember. The middle one. I started live streaming the third box. I did, I think, about 3. To be fair, I don't think it works very well as a 2-player game, which is what I've been doing, two-handing it. But also, like, the end of, I remember I played Embers or whatever, the Embers of Something is the DLC adventure. And I played that with a friend of mine who was very new to board gaming during lockdown, because we were effectively in a bubble, and we So we were sort of, I was very limited in what we can do. So I thought, okay, we'll play this on adventure mode, which is the baby simple mode. And it was so badly constructed. The narrative was so bad. I was just really mad at how poorly done it was. I was like, this just feels so lazy, and the writing is just so bad. And it's kind of like all of the thoughts you have about good game design had just been forgotten. It's like, this is fine because it's an app or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's just such a pity because I love Lord of the Rings, and I think that could have been a really fun set.
Well, speaking of things that are old but new again, I think we've both got one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, do you want to go first with yours? I have not played this.
Sure, you not played Luxor?
No, I
Oh,
haven't.
it's excellent. Ish. Like, is, right? It's not. Anyway, Luxor by Queen Games is currently just finishing up a Kickstarter, probably finished by the time you see this, but Queen Games, they'll be selling copies of it, don't worry. And this is the big box, which contains the main game, the first expansion, which I forget the name of, Mummy's Curse, and the bunch of the, what are they called, Queenies. Like they're mini promos, all in one box. It doesn't need a bigger box as far as I'm aware, but it's called the big box. So physically, I'm not sure how big this box will be. That's beside the point. And they're doing it on Kickstarter in conjunction with a big box of runestones, which I've not played. But Luxor I have played. So Luxor, you are an Indiana Jones style figure, and you're working your way around a snail style grid to get to the middle, and along the way you're discovering treasures, collecting sets of things, trying to rack up points whilst avoiding traps, and really just it's quite a thematic way of scoring points is the only way I could probably describe it. It's a thematic point salad to some degree. On your turn, can I remember how you play this? No, not specifically. I can't remember. Oh, you've got cards in hand. That's it. So you've got cards in hand, and you can only play your left or right. And when you get a new card, it goes in the middle. So you've got a hand of 5 cards. You'll play one from your left or right, and it'll be a number generally between 1 and 5. You'll then pick one of your explorers. You have a team of 3 or 4 explorers to move that many spaces, and then you'll get whatever the reward is on that space. Usually it is a tile, which could be like a vase, a statue, or a necklace, and then you're trying to collect sets of the 3 of those to score points, as well as the points that are on the vase. But the trick is that you need a certain number of explorers on that tile to claim it. So the low value ones would only need 1 explorer to claim it, but later on you'll need 2 or 3 people on that space to get it. So you're bringing everybody up at the kind of the same time to be able to collect the points. Then there's special tiles that give you bonuses. There's tiles that will catapult you kind of around the board. If you get to the end, you get the mummies, which are worth more. There are secret passages that let you sort of teleport around. So if you're at the back, just scooping up all those quick tiles or those easier tiles and moving your people through, then suddenly the person that's taken the tile before you reveals a secret passage, and you're able to scoot through that to get ahead of them and start picking them up. It's fun enough. I don't know if I could say there's a huge amount of depth to the game. It's not something you're going to get consistently better at over time, but it is a lot of fun, and it is solid enough with the mechanisms that it has. So this was one, if I had more family style games in my collection, I would certainly consider it. But I don't have any shelf space, so I'm not buying this one right now, but I can recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough to say like, hey, my gaming group's currently aren't really configured for this kind of thing. But if you like family weight games, then this could be for you.
There's a lot there for everybody, I think, right? So it's a game you can definitely play with people who are a little younger. I think it's ages 8+. The weight's 1.9. Like it's not a heavy game. Anybody can kind of figure it out. There is strategies, and you will want to do better than other people. So,
I mean, I've quite enjoyed a few games from Rudiger Dorn. I was just looking to see what else he's designed. Las Vegas, of course, is great. Really fun, light gambling game. Istanbul was pretty good, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I played.
yep.
And also, there's which I don't know if this is actually his first game, but the first game here on his design list is The Traders of Genoa, which I actually still have. I like.
I played Las Vegas or Istanbul the most there, but I also quite like Dragonheart. It's probably, again, not a great game, but I like it.
Sometimes sometimes that's enough. We're not going to get into the analysis of why Barry likes Dragonheart, but you can go and check out Luxor on Kickstarter if you're interested. I would also observe, and I'm sure this isn't going to become a thing, but this is a campaign run by Mowgli Games, who are actually the German distributor for Queen Games, I think, and have had one of their campaigns recently shut down or suspended rather, because they were basically just using Kickstarter as a pre-order service for their old Queen Games stock.
Yeah.
Or not even a pre-order service, but just an order service. Queen Games have actually had a campaign shut down because they did the exact same thing. If you were a recent backer of their Merlin Big Box campaign, you will see that they added, in fact, a new space game into that, precisely that so they could have an excuse to move the stock that Mowgli was trying to move with the campaign that got suspended. I don't know if those kinds of practices bother you. I just thought I'd call it out because they were doing it and they got in trouble for it, and so I guess we should mention that. But
fair.
If you're a consumer who's not really, and to be fair, are we really conscientious these days about people using Kickstarter not in the spirit of the way Kickstarter was founded?
It's so far gone from there. Yeah, like the original.
Yeah, it's so far gone. I mean, I'd love to be idealistic about it, but I don't know if there's any coming back from where it's gotten to.
Nah.
And this just in, breaking news. I've literally just received an email while we've been talking from Steamforged Games to say that they've acquired the license for Six Siege, the board game. Did you play it?
So the board game or the video game?
The board game.
No.
This was on Kickstarter a while ago. I played the TTS mod on a live stream with Chris Britton, who contributes to the show. And then we never got to actually play it again because Mythic just was awful, and they are awful, and I never even talked about it again because Mythic are so awful. The game itself is actually really cool. It's something I think I just mentioned before the show, actually, Barry, which was that I wish more people did, like I think I said to you, dexterity games with like a much heavier hobby slant. Mm-hmm. This is real time with a heavy hobby slant. And you could play it as a head-to-head skirmish game, but it comes with an app that is a chess clock, functionally. And you have to take your turns in real time, jumping back and forth. I really liked it. I thought it was really crazy. There's a lot of little futsy rules, so it's quite a heavy buy-in. So I think if you like sort of something that's, what it's trying to model here is like the Six Siege video game, right? And you need sort of tension and stuff like that. And I think that's hard to capture. And here the way they've done it is by giving both players a time limit with a chess clock. And so you have to make your moves really, really quickly. Anyway, I thought the game was really neat. So, I'm not like a massive fan of Steamforged, but I am pleased to see that they've acquired this. And I don't know if they're going to remunerate backers who got, got a hard deal from Mythic, who kept asking for more money to deliver this, and I believe didn't deliver to a whole bunch of backers because they wouldn't pay more for the game they'd already covered. It's just a really sad story, and Mythic had a ton of really good titles, and they blew it all by just being really bad at what they were supposed to do. So it's a real shame, but I'm pleased to see this is being picked up and potentially will be made available again via Steamforged, because it's a really curious oddity, and I think it deserves to exist.
Ask me what I think about the Rainbow Six Siege video game.
What do you think about the Rainbow Six Siege video game?
I haven't played it either.
Yep, I haven't played it either. I played Rainbow Six a long time ago, way before Siege, just when it was a Xbox game.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about that, though, because that's utterly irrelevant. Instead, I'm going to talk about a big box campaign that I caught my attention, which is Star Trek Ascendancy All In from Gale Force 9. So we played Star Trek Ascendancy on the channel, not Barry and I, but me and my contributors, Ben and Ollie, played it. Must be 8 years ago on the show, which is wild. Was it maybe 6 or 7 years ago? It was time marches on. It's a long time ago. We played the original core game, which came out in 2016. It was 3 players only, which I'd totally forgotten about. So you had the Federation, the Klingons, and I believe the Romulans in there.
Sounds right.
It says on the box it says on the box it's 3 hours, and that's it. It will be 3 hours. It's got a weight of 3.18, and it's designed by Aaron Dill, who did Spartacus, Firefly, and Sons of Anarchy, all Gale Force 9 games. John Kowaleski, who has the same credits, many of the same credits, and Sean Swigart, who also has the same credits, but also worked on Family Guy, Stewie's Sexy Party, which is a word game. And I mention it because the artist is Katie Dillon, who worked on Tyrants of the Underdark, Firefly, Sons of Anarchy, and Family Guy, Stewie's Sexy Party. Which I just want to say. And the other artist is Charles Woods, who worked on Spartacus, Firefly, and Sons of Anarchy. And these contributors have some more credits as well, but these are the ones I sort of picked up. So you can see, I think they're largely a sort of in-house team for Gale Force 9, working on titles that the company have put out. And yeah, we did do, I think, a rules video and a playthrough. It's like 7 years old, so it's going to be really basic. The other thing that's pretty funny about our playthrough of that is we totally forgot about warp, which is a way you can move around the board really quickly. So we spend the entire game moving our ships really slowly. I'm trying to remember what they call it in the show, because I love Star Trek. Impulse speed, yeah, just impulse speeding around the board. So it's a unique playthrough of Star Trek Ascendancy. Have you played it, Barry?
I've not, but I do have Spartacus and Firefly. I previously owned Sons of Anarchy and WWE Superstar Showdown, which are all from Gale Force 9 and Sean Swigart, amongst others. And this did also catch my eye. However, I think it's like $500 all in or something, is it?
So I think the gameplay all in is in the region of $300. If you want all of the unique miniatures and dice, then which aren't gameplay, they're just more pretty, then it is, $500. And there are 3 new. So I said it was 3 players only. It goes up to way more than that with the expansions that they've subsequently released. It's all new races or factions from Star Trek. I know that there are 3 brand new ones as a part of this campaign as well, all of which are, just the absolute bottom of the barrel factions that nobody cares about. And Trekkies out there will probably be fuming, but I consider myself a Trekkie, and I don't care about these. They've added in the Terran Empire, which is the Federation from
Mirror Universe,
the parallel universe where it's evil. You've got the Gorn Hegemony, which only exists because Kirk fought one time, and God, I can't remember the name of the last one. Tholian, who are like a sort of a xenophobic alien race that really only exist to have conversations around how we deal with xenophobes. They pop up in various episodes just as a sort of a villain, and I don't think there's a single named Tholian in all of Star Trek. So, and I'm probably wrong. The Trekkies will come out and correct me. The hardcore Trekkies with encyclopedic knowledge will come out and correct me. But you know what? Like, I know a lot of I know more about Star Trek than probably the people. The point is, like, nobody was dying for these races, but they wanted to put something into the Kickstarter. It is a really nice presentation of the game. Like I have in the past. So I never actually owned Star Trek Ascendancy. We played Ben's version on the show. I kept thinking about picking it up. I wanted to own it just because I really like Star Trek. I've got a number of other Star Trek games. I've got Fleet Commander, which is the WizKids clicky ships one, which I really, really like. And that was recently reprinted. So that's accessible again, which is good because I think it's really good. But I think it really captures Star Trek well. It's got a lot of futzy rules, and the rulebook's not great, and the Dominion's totally overpowered in that. But it's hard to find a Star Trek game that I think gives you a sort of a feel for the show and has a really good balance. I don't know if Ascendancy necessarily did that for me. It's a really straight 4X game with, it's very much conflict oriented. So it's about discovering new systems, holding them, getting resources, going out and attacking the other players. I've heard from people who've played, because I've only played the core game, I've heard from people that have played more that the expansion races are like not well balanced, which is a shame. Having said that, this production's really nice. I'm a Trekkie, and I'm in real danger of just falling into the hole on this one.
Wow, as a real Trekker who would never call himself a Trekkie. Another thing to note is this takes up 2 galaxies.
Yeah.
I do not.
So you got one box that's like the whole game, and another box that's all the factions.
Yeah. I do not have this kind of space.
But you don't have to get all that stuff.
That's not true.
It's it's all in or nothing. Those are your 2
You'll
options.
always be sad if you don't get it all.
There is a so I mean they have released the Star Trek Ascendancy stuff as bits and pieces over the course of the last 9 years since it came out. It is, I don't know if it would have been more economic to buy it as you went, or if it's more economic to just get it all now. I would point out it's often very readily available in the secondhand market. I think it's a solid sort of 4X type game, but it takes up an insane amount of table space. It's hard to keep under control because people can just discover new systems and put them out all the time. So you need a big table for it. It's a whole afternoon game, really. It says 3 hours on the box. It's probably longer than that. It depends. If you play it really quickly, sure, but you're also going to be looking up the rules a bunch because it's Gale Force 9. But I think, if you like sort of 4X type games and you like Star Trek, I don't think that there's a really a better alternative. Fleet Commander doesn't feel 4X. Although I think it's a lot of fun. It's also, you're going to have your heads down in the rule books for that as well. And they just feel like different games. Ascendancy is grander. Like in Fleet Commander, you feel like you're in control of some ships. In Ascendancy, you feel like you're playing as a whole faction with a star bases and everything, But I guess it depends on what kind of Star Trek you want. If you're missing the concept of sort of crewing ships, and I do think you do that in Ascendancy, but it's way more prevalent in Fleet Commander, where it's much more focused on the individual ships and the crew on those ships. So if you want that sort of more zoomed in Star Trek ship focus, I think you'd be better off looking at Fleet Commander. But if you like the idea of sort of a more sort of like bigger, high scope war game, then Ascendancy is well worth looking at. And I don't know if you need to get it as part of this campaign necessarily. It's not been hard to get. But obviously, if you really like it and you like your deluxe stuff, then it's worth checking out.
Yeah, I do want to play it. And looking at the expansion stuff, like the new expansion stuff with the races nobody asked for. There's campaign mode in there. So if you play this a lot, I think you might enjoy some of those.
I have heard that the Borg has a sort of a solo mode as well, where they sort of present this interesting dynamic where the Borg are an AI opponent that everyone has to fight off while simultaneously playing the game, which is a mode that really appeals to me. But I have heard from everyone who's tried it that the Borg are impossible and you all just end up getting assimilated, which is, to be fair, probably quite realistic.
More accurate.
It's, yeah. I mean, obviously, it doesn't actually go that way in the show, but it comes very close a bunch of times.
Nice.
So you've got a few little bits and pieces to wrap up.
A couple bits just to wrap up. We've spoken about Bomb Busters on the channel before. I got Mike to pick up the 3 additional scenarios or missions from Essen while he was there for me. And then on Valentine's Day, they released a new mission, which is 2-player only. So normally you can only play Bomb Busters with 3 or more players. That's not true. You can play 2 players, but I don't like playing 2 players because if you don't have the wires, your opponent has the wires, and it just takes out a layer of the deduction. But it's a 2-player only mission. You can print it out yourself. It's just the mission sheet and 2 heart-shaped tokens. Indeed, you could probably take some heart-shaped tokens from any other game that you own. But that is available to download from the Board Game Geek forums for Bomb Busters. And one, again, last minute addition. So just before coming onto the podcast, I did see that the expansion art for Deep Regrets, Loch and River Fishing was posted. It's not even up on Board Game Geek yet, although I'm sure it will be quite soon. I think the artist or designer spoiled it one of the groups I was in. And I had a look. There's nothing in the rules about not talking about it. So if he's put it publicly, it is public. And Deep Regrets, not a game that I own, but it was a game that I did see at the Expo last year and did follow the Kickstarter while it was happening. I've enjoyed watching other people play it. I think it's quite an interesting game. So let's see what this expansion adds.
A friend of mine is in the Kickstarter trailer for that.
Really?
Don't know how he actually ended up there. I meant to ask him. I spoke to him like yesterday. I meant to ask him, and then we got distracted with other stuff.
Fair.
So there's my Deep Regrets tangent. So we will now move on to some more serious things to wrap up the news. The first is, are we going to announce the BGA winners? See how accurate Barry was?
Yeah, so that was the board game arena. Odd category of games. I made some predictions, and by predictions I mean I voted and played all the games to do so. But the winners were announced a little while ago, actually. But we didn't discuss them. The winner for the best casual game was, drumroll, Castle Combo, which was the game that I picked, I think. Very fun.
It's been like weeks. Barry can't remember.
Yeah. I'm sure I did. Like Castle Combo, very fun, very deserving casual game winner. Has elements that benefit repeated plays, knowing what cards are possible and what all the shields do and when to move and when to spend your keys. But also super accessible, fairly easy to teach. Just as long as you can explain that grid to people, they will get it. Then the best 2-player game was one of the categories I poo-pooed some of the entries because there was 2 trading card games on there, one of which has since been cancelled. And that is Splendor Duel. Now that's not a new game as such, but it's new to Board Game Arena for last year, and it is a fantastic 2-player game, preferred way of playing Splendor at any player count, to be fair. And that was also my pick, so pretty much nailing it so far. The best animal game was The Wolves. So the other ones in this category were New York Zoo, which didn't work. Cat in the Box, which I think is a very fun trick-taking game. Mountain Goats, which I think was my pick because it's just super easy, super fun to play. And The Wolves.
I think you did, yeah.
But
pick Mountain Goats.
There was not a lot in it. 30.96% of the votes went to The Wolves, and 30.06% of the votes went to Mountain Goats. So I was pretty close on that one. Then best expert game was Darwin's Journey. I went with Terraforming Mars. The other choices were Age of Innovation and River of Gold. Again, quite close. There was only a couple of percent in that one. I played a game of Darwin's Journey last night and scored a phenomenal 232 points. Really good score.
Wow.
Really great player. But that kind of is indicative of experience, right? So I was by far the most experienced player of the game. I knew what I was doing. Other players were very inexperienced. Not necessarily the first game, but just hadn't played it a lot. And they scored like 117 and 102 or something. And I just smashed them. So I like that experience counts for something. And skill counts for something in these kind of games.
Well, I think it's about a balance, right? Like, if you have a table of hobby gamers who aren't going to mind losing something so long as they have a compelling puzzle, then, it's great. If you've got a table of people who are just like casual friends who are like, hey, you like board games, should we play something? It's not the right choice.
Absolutely true.
So, I think Darwin's Journey is, I think I remember you saying you picked Terraforming Mars because you felt like the BGA adaptation was very good, which I think is an absolutely fair criteria for this kind of award. I do think Darwin's Journey is a great pick out of those games. I don't mind Age of Innovation either. I think River of Gold is punching massively above its weight in Best Expert Game category. And I believe it should have been in Best Regular Game category, really.
I don't know what the weights are on Board Game Geek, but the final category was Best Regular Game, and that one went to Harmonies, which I think I picked as well. And it dominated compared to Cartographers, Middle Ages, and Loot. And I have played, I've actually played a reasonable number of games of Harmonies now, both in real life in French. It's fine, there's no text on the cards. And on Board Game Arena. So all pretty good. I'll tell you what's the most telling, the two TCGs in the two-player game. So Splendor Duel, 63% of the votes, smashed it. Altered, one of the TCGs, 20%. Pocket Cats, 15%. Battle Spirit Saga, 1.78%. And that was the game that was cancelled in real life.
Yeah, not unsurprising then that nobody really knows what that is or has played it.
Or likes
you must have played it once.
I have, yeah. It is not good.
So I've got two more things for the news, actually. One's a quick addendum for the end here, but we'll go into something that is a little bit more of a topic, I guess, or a continuation of a topic we've covered a few times now, which is this whole AI art thing. And this is just because Spokes is a game coming from Radical 8. It's a light abstract game, which Barry can possibly tell us more about because I've only looked at their crowdfunding campaign, which is live now. But I think you had a chance to look at this maybe at a convention or something. But I can give at least the high-level overview of the rules because I looked at the GIFs on the Kickstarter page. But one thing I noticed about the Kickstarter page was that it had a big banner that said, "This is an AI-free product. This product contains no AI-generated images or text. Radical 8 Games does not use AI art for any of its games, including Spokes. We strongly believe in paying artists for their work. All the artwork in the game, from the box to the boards, has been created by Rusum Bell. Her use of color and vibrancy hasn't changed since she worked with us on Die of the Dead back in 2019. And I'd note that Radical 8 are not a big publisher. They've had about 4 or 5 games, I think. I picked out Forks and Damask as 2 that I spotted on their list of publications. And this is Bert Hardemann's first design as well. I thought the game looked like a pleasant, sort of abstract geometrical game. You're racing bikes around I can't remember what they're called, those sort of circular race tracks where they go really, really fast. Say that again?
Velodromes.
Velodromes. So it's a velodrome racing game, and the way it actually manifests is you've got little spots for your pieces, and they're connected by colored wooden lines. And then you've got the matching lines on your player board, and you're sort of doing this rondelle thing where you step over the lines on your player board, and one of the lines that you step over, you can move along that color this turn. So you're sort of trying to track a path across the colors, and you can jump on your opponent's heads as well to get sort of a wild move as well in the future.
Yeah, I did see it at the Games Expo last year. It was in its sort of prototype form. I didn't get a chance to play it, but I did kind of just look over somebody's shoulder for a little bit, and I did hear good things about it throughout the convention. Indeed, I overheard a number of times people telling their friends, "Oh, you got to go play Spokes." So definitely one to consider, but watch the gameplay videos and read the rules to decide if it's for you.
Well, one of the things, this is, I suppose, less of I mean, if this looks like something that appeals to you as sort of a light, geometric, abstract game with a fairly prominent theme and unique artwork, it's going to be down to subjectivity ultimately. I think it looks perfectly usable in terms of like the graphical interface, but there is a definite art style to it as well that you will like or feel about. But I just it's not an expensive game. I think backing it is less than £30 plus shipping and taxes. So it's not a big one to get involved in if it takes your fancy. But I do really appreciate this supporting of artists, and if I were interested in backing this, and I haven't actually looked at it in too much detail yet, and I probably will take another look at it because there's some really cute little pieces to it as well. But I would definitely be very happy knowing that this is going to have the curation of an actual artist behind it as well to make sure it looks as good as it can. And just before we move into our final section, which is the played section, of course, where we talk about some of the games we've been playing, I just wanted to shout out as well that Paul Grogan has a fundraising campaign going on at the moment. This is for charity research. So, as someone that Paul knew, who was a backer of the Galactic Cruise Kickstarter, has passed away, sadly, from cancer. And so Paul is giving away their pledge on Tiltify to raise money for Cancer Research UK. So you can go and potentially win a copy of that. I'll put a link to the Tiltify campaign in the show notes. Okie dokie.
Games.
Games.
Do we talk about games on here? One or two. So I've played a lot of different games, mostly on Board Game Arena, and I've played a lot of actually live action games as well.
I've got a couple that I've played. One of them happens to be top of the hotness at the very moment of recording. Somehow that happened. I will cover that at the end, so stick around. But let's start with whatever Barry thinks is the most interesting to open with.
Yeah. So the most interesting game I've played in the last couple of weeks has been Nova Era. This is a Simon game designed by Andrea Carvesio, who's done loads of things, but it includes Marvel United with Simon and Hyperborea, which we've spoken about on the channel before. The artist here is Agnes Rapoche, or I presume that's how it's said. Done Architects of Amatis, which we spoke about in the last podcast, and Paris New Eden. And I think I've mentioned at that point that I think she has a style of art that's going to become people become more familiar with and very well suited to board games. So Nova Era, if you've not seen it, is a dice drafting, civilization building, worker placement where the dice are your workers. There is a light tech tree element to it, and you're collectively avoiding disaster, and it does so in a way that's better than Empire's End, which I spoke about in one of the very early podcasts. And the game is played First player takes 3 dice out of the bag, rolls them, puts them on what would be like a factory from Azul, and does that for every player plus 1. Then players in reverse turn order are going to draft a set of those 3 dice, with whatever's left being the number and colour of the disaster tracks that are going to move up. So if somebody leaves 3 6s, that will move 3 of the disaster tracks 6 out of the 10 spaces before disaster strikes. Now, big dice are almost always better in this. So there is a small mechanism where if you take more than 10 pips worth of dice, then your civilization starts building unrest for every pip more than 10. And once you're up to 7, your civilization's in turmoil and you have to spin all your dice down by 1. And that can remain until for future rounds if you're not able to deal with it. But if it goes all the way up to 10, you have a riot. You have to destroy each of your tech tracks, or one building from each of your technologies, and resets it to come back up. So there's different colours of dice. I'm not sure what they represent necessarily, but there's green, red's military, green science.
Well, we all know that red is military and green is science and yellow's money. Those are the rules. Blue is culture.
Yellow could well be money and blue could well be culture because it is writing and things like that. I forget what they all are. And black dice let you recruit personalities into your civilization. And there are purple buildings or purple not quite technologies. Imagine what would you call democracy or diplomacy or something? Purple
government.
Yeah, like governments or ways of managing
politics.
Which can be obtained through sort of upgrades or spending wild kind of dice. Anyway, on your turn, you've drafted 3 dice, which gives you 3 actions. You're going to take shot about going round. You can cash in a dice for as many of that resource of that type. So I would spend my 5 green for 5 green resources. This is important because I can then add those resources to any green purchase. So later on, if I had another green 5, I could put that and 3 of my green resources to buy an 8 science building or technology. Second one you can do is buy direct from the tableau using that method, spending a dice for the value. You can play a card from your hand, spending a dice for the value, adding any resources extra you have. You don't get any change. Or in the case of recruiting personalities, your black dice, if you don't have enough, you can gain unrest equal to the difference. So if you've got a black 3 and you need 4, you can gain 1 unrest to purchase that personality. The game's played over 3 eras. What ends an era?
Disaster, usually. Disaster or major technological innovation.
Yeah, no. Age 1 has 2 rounds, and then ages 2 and 3 have 3 rounds. That was it. And then at the end of each round, you're going to score, and on your cards are going to be things like income, which will occur every turn, right? Every round within an age. You'll have end of round scoring, which will be things like compare your technology tiles to other players' technologies. If you have the most, gain 2 points. Your personalities are typically your end of round scoring, and they will require you to work towards having 4 or 5 certain criteria to meet to earn your points. And then as you progress into ages 2 and 3, if you've built certain cards, you will immediately unlock and gain the upgraded version to your hand. However, usually when you build that, you will retire another technology, which if it's your own, you'll get a point. But if it's somebody else's, they just have to lose it. Sad for them. that'll continue until the end of the third age, where you add up all the points. It's not a massively high scoring game. I think we finished sort of like 40, 35-ish points throughout the whole thing. Getting 2 points on a card is important. There was a number of catch-up mechanisms in each age, primarily on the personalities that came out. And it's good in a way, because it's not useful for the player who's in the lead to take them. They get no advantage for doing so. And because actions are very tight, you don't want to be wasting it just to stop the player who's furthest behind. And so they were generally free for the person in last place to try and mount a comeback. And they seem super strong. However, we weren't able to mount any kind of comebacks, even though it was... it felt as though the person in last place was getting super powerful actions every turn. I was dominant in the first era, and I was like pretty confident going into age 2. I could not get a yellow technology that whole age, which set me back completely. One of the other players managed to did the absolute worst in age 1, but then stabilised in age 2 and actually had a little thing going, which continued into age 3, where they dominated by that sort of 5-10 points at the end. And the other player, who was worse than me in ages 1 and 2, did utilise the catch-up mechanisms to finish on the same score as me. But there was no way they were catching the guy in first place. So whilst we've only played it once, can't say definitively that we played everything at an expert level and knew when to try and stop somebody getting something. But I did feel for age 2 that I was at the mercy of the cards that were available to me. You can't just buy everything, you can only buy the lowest thing in a stack. And so if you buy something from that stack, that opens it up for everybody else. So you have to hope that it's still there by the time it comes back around to you. I felt quite hard done by that I couldn't hit any of my goals that I'd worked towards in age 1, purely from luck of the draw. The game did overstay its welcome slightly by the end of age 3, I would say. Probably that'll get faster the more we play. Once we know a bit more what the cards do and what we're trying to work towards, we won't have to read them all and try and figure out what the best move is on each dice placement. And overall, it was fine. I'll definitely play it again. It's going to have to do some work to convince me that it's a great game, and a great civilization building game in particular. We didn't trigger the main Dark Age disaster, which sets everybody back massively, but we did manage to trigger enough of the individual colour disasters that getting buildings that stopped riots, getting buildings that stopped anarchy was useful. Yeah, it was okay.
And what sort of weight rating is this?
So this is, I would think, I'm going to guess off the top of my head, I've not looked yet. Eyes are shut. I don't know how my eyes are shut. I think it's probably close to 2.9. Let's see. Nova Era, 2.5. All right, fine. I'd give them that. Like, once you're on top of it, it probably gets a lot easier. The actual individual actions aren't that difficult. You take one of your dice, you do something with it. But there is a lot of reading on those cards, and I feel like, based on my experience of trying to teach Distilled to my cousin and his wife, that when there's a lot of reading on each individual card, they really should pump up the weights, because that really adds a lot of overhead to what you're doing, and every card in this is unique. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Certainly you do notice a huge difference between, and I noted this particularly noticeable to me for all the rules videos I made historically. Just like when there's lots of cards, or lots of cards with lots of iconography and text, it's a different kind of complexity, certainly, to games that don't have that.
So yeah, it's good. I end up rating it bang on a 7 at the moment. It could go up if I think it has a degree of depth to it. I do want to play it at least one more time, so that's why it's at a 7. Yeah, happy to play again. as I say, my ratings are based on Board Game Geek's ratings, which are pretty much how much do you want to play it, not necessarily how great a game do you think it is. But it could go either way. It could go up a couple of points, well, maybe a point or two. That's the same as a couple of points. Could go up a point if it's like, okay, actually now we're into the swing of things, and the real game comes down to that meta element of what dice are you taking, what are you going to leave. When you're first player, you've got last pick, so you're in control of what tracks are going to trigger, deciding what personalities to take, which will be different every game. You don't see everything that comes out, and how flexible that kind of mechanisms are. So it could be better than I'm giving it credit for. But similarly, if I play it more and it's like, well, this is just the same every time, or again, I can't mitigate the luck that stopped me in this first game, then I might not want to go back to it as much. So the scores could go down.
Yep, that sounds fair enough to me. Yeah, so I mean, I'd definitely give this a go. Certainly, sounds interesting. And you know, at a 2.5, it should be fairly straightforward to get to the table, right? How many players did you have?
We had 3. Goes up to 4, I think. I see the community there is best at 2, but still okay at 3. I think at 4 could be a bit too slow. Like it was dragging already at 3. But that should pick up as people become more au fait with the cards and what they're trying to do.
Yeah, fair enough. It's always going to be a bit more of a learning curve when there's all those cards with all those rules on.
Yeah.
Nice. So I'll be keen to hear if you get it back to the table and how that affects your opinion of it.
We'll update in a future podcast.
Well, I've got something of an update for you all because I'm going to talk about a game that's 3 years old. And it's actually even older than that because it's New York City, a re-implementation of Rialto. So this is from 2022. This was the first Queen Games big Kickstarter for the Stefan Feld City series. If you have no idea what those words mean, Stefan Feld, of course, is a very well-established Eurogame designer who did Castles of Burgundy, as well as what I've written here is some others, but actually tens of others, of beloved Eurogame classics and, you know, classics amongst the Eurogame aficionados, shall we say. Queen Games decided to do an incredibly overproduced and very expensive run of Kickstarter re-implementations with varying degrees of success. But a lot of the Stefan Felds had been out of print and difficult to acquire, you know, very wild sort of range of acquirability in the secondhand market, occasionally some of them fetching hundreds of pounds and others people find in thrift stores for a tenner, you know, just pretty crazy. But the New York City is the re-implementation of an older game by Feld called Rialto, and it is a lighter Feld game. So this is a 1 to 4 player game. It says it takes 45 to 60 minutes, and it has a complexity of 2.72. And the artist for the Queen Games edition is Clemens Franz, who everyone will know as the original German board game artist, having done art for Agricola, Orleans, Grand Austria Hotel, and 378 other games. That's not true, actually. 378 credits in total. But anyway, yeah, Clemens Franz has been around for a very long time and does many of the Uwe Rosenberg games, particularly the classic Uwe Rosenbergs like, well, Agricola and Caverna as well. So New York City is and so we played it the other day at 4. This is the first time I've managed to get it back to the table since it first arrived, and I had reasons for wanting to revisit a middleweight, sort of 60-minute-ish area control game, and that's what it is. In New York City, the players are all business moguls, I guess, It's your property developers developing property in New York City, and the board is all the different boroughs of New York. So you've got Queens and Bronx and New Jersey and Manhattan on there, and you've got the mayor of New York who is going to walk around all the different boroughs. And the core of the game is each borough is worth points, and at the end of the game, whoever built the most skyscrapers in the borough will get the points for that area. There's half points awarded for second place, and then half again of that for third place, and so on. And the catch is that you can only build in the borough when the mayor's there. So round to round, the mayor will move on from the borough, and then you will have missed your chance to build skyscrapers there, and you'll be sad. Now, there is under sort of supporting this, undermining this, supporting this as a action selection mechanism, which involves drafting and then bidding. So a round is drafting some cards, then bidding on actions with those cards, then a little bit of cleanup, rinse, repeat, 5 rounds, I believe, and then the game ends. And this is tracked by the mayor. There are 6 boroughs in total on the board, but only 5 of them will be active, with a 6th inactive borough that's randomized during setup. And once the mayor has completed their tour of the boroughs, and in the Queen Games Deluxe Edition, of course, the mayor is a little standee of Stefan Feld. But once Stefan Feld has completed his tour of the boroughs, the game will end and we'll proceed to final scoring, which largely comes from these area majorities, but there are additional points to be earned for your staff. So during the round of the game, you'll get to draft those cards at the start. It's going to be a snake draft. And is it a snake draft? No, it's not. It's not a snake draft at all. I'm like, so it's just going to be a straight draft. We're going to deal out player count times 2 plus 1 stacks of 2 cards. And then you'll end up getting 2 stacks. So you'll end the round with 4 cards. There are asymmetrical player powers that can be acquired over the course of the game that can disrupt this and maybe potentially get you an extra card or 2. But typically, this is how it works. And then we go into the actions, and the actions are taken in a very strict order. And there is also a round order, which is determined by the press track. So you're higher up on the press track, you get to take the first turn, both in drafting the cards and in the very first round of bidding, which happens to be for the press track. So the very first action on the action ladder is press, and you'll always go through the actions bidding on them in the exact same order. And the way it works is everyone bids, then we resolve the action, everyone bids on the next action, we resolve that, and so on. And the bid has 2 functions. The first is that the amount you bid will give you a strength for the action. So when we're bidding on the press track, the very first action, you will climb the press track equal to the value of your bid. If you happen to be the highest bidder, you get a bonus step. And this is how it works for every action. If you happen to be the highest bidder, you get to do a bonus thing. But everyone gets to do the action in a strength equal to their bid. What are you bidding? The cards you drafted. So if you didn't draft any press cards, your bid is 0 and you just don't do anything at all. You can use 2. So the cards that you drafted in the opening round are all represented all the actions. So they represent all the actions you can do. And so you've only got 4 cards. There's like 6 actions. So if you didn't get a particular action, you just can't do that action this round. So you've got to be quite choosy about what you do. And you can always use 2 matching cards as one of any other action. So there is a sort of a way to sack off 2 cards that you don't want if they're matching to take a different action, but it's quite a high cost because you're sacking off a whole sort of action strength. Like I said, the value of the bid is the strength of the action you're taking. So, you know, it's quite important. And then there's also a wild card, but the wild card doesn't let you take any action. Instead, it can be used as an additional strength on any action. So if you've got 1 press card, you could include a wild card for 2 strength for press. But if you don't have any press cards at all, you can't use the wild on its own. You have to combine it with something else. So managing this system is the sort of the core wrinkle of the game. If you're familiar with Stefan Feld's other games, I'm thinking specifically of Castles of Burgundy, I'm thinking of Civolution, I'm thinking of Marrakesh, then you're sort of these action restriction systems that he likes to play around with. This will feel quite familiar with that. The amount of action restriction here is pretty brutal. Like you really have to focus on something. And so as you move through these actions, the first thing you can do is this press thing. The second thing you can do is get some money. The money is only good for helping you with the next action, which is acquire staff. So I mentioned we all kind of have these asymmetrical player powers at the start, just little things that we'll have drafted during setup. But there's a whole tableau of them, and this third action lets you hire. They're staff members, but really they're asymmetrical player powers that you're buying, and they have a cost up to 5, and you can buy based on the value of your bid. So if you bid 2, you can buy from the first or second row, and they get sequentially better. So you're sort of developing this asymmetrical player power tableau, and they're also all worth points at the end, what you paid for them. So that's, I think, probably the main avenue to victory and points outside of the area majority in the boroughs themselves. After you've done that, the next action is something called, I think it's prestige action. It might be get more skyscrapers, but you've got this sort of system where the skyscrapers are in a supply, and you use this action to get them from the supply onto your player board. Once they're there, you can use the final action of the round to place them into the borough where the mayor is. And so, you've got this sort of acquiring skyscrapers and putting them out, and acquiring them and putting them out system. And so again, like if you want to participate quite a lot in the area majority, you've got to manage both of those actions. And just going heavy into 2 actions around when you only have 4 cards is quite difficult, So again, you have to be really ruthless about how you're prioritizing these. The last action you can do, which is the penultimate action of the round, is the prestige action, which is also pretty cool. You get to earn victory points equal to the value of your bid. So again, you can go in big here, just straight earn points. But the winner gets to have a token that they can add to a borough, and it's worth extra points. So you can increase the value of a borough. Let's say you built loads of skyscrapers in the Bronx. You put your token in there to make it worth more. The other cool thing about the tokens is that they add a skyscraper into the borough for you when you place them. So if you want to create a tie or get ahead of someone you're tied with, you can put more points into that borough, add another skyscraper, get ahead. You can also place them into the excluded borough that was rejected during setup. And so you can start to actually build up a majority there, even though no one's actually going to be able to place any skyscrapers there in any other way, because the mayor will never visit it. So, really ruthless action selection. And then basically just do that 5 times, end of game, final scoring, get the points for the boroughs, and this get the points for all the staff members you've hired. There's some other incidental points and things like that, but most of your points will be coming from end game scoring. Very small amount of during the game scoring points. I like this. I like this well enough. I went heavy into just area majority. I didn't hire any staff. I ruthlessly pursued just getting some skyscrapers in every borough. There's a little benefit if you do get to be present everywhere. So I was kind of focused on that. I didn't feel good passing up on the asymmetrical powers every round, but I did manage to pull out the win with that strategy. The second place person had gone almost exclusively on staff and tableau building of the powers. So it's nice to see that there were sort of 2 avenues to earning points there, and they both seemed relatively competitive. It was nice to break it back out. I mean, I can see. I don't know if it's like top tier. It feels a little bit like the sort of abstraction of the game is very obvious, like whether it's Rialto or New York. It feels very much like a sort of abstract Euro game rather than a highly thematic game about building buildings. If you need to put out a skyscraper and you can't get one from your player board because you don't have any left, you can sell a skyscraper you have in another borough and build it in the new borough. So, there's sort of the attempts at making a thematic justification for very normal Euro mechanisms, but you're not going to get a strong sense of theme from it. But if you like puzzles and Euro games, particularly that have a fair amount of player interaction and move along quickly, then you're probably going to enjoy this. We played it at 4. Took about 90 minutes. I don't think it would get any longer than that. So yeah, a solid title.
I've not played too many of the Steamforged games. Castles of Burgundy, of course, being one of my favourites, if not my favourite. Amerigo we played. I really want to play that again. But all of these rethemed city games, I don't think I've played many or any even. But I don't know whether I'd like this.
I mean, you have to have a friend who either you have to spend a lot of money on these, or you have to have a friend who's willing to spend a lot of money on them. And
the pricing from Queen seems egregious.
Well, they know that there was big demand for these, and so they were quite willing to enjoy the profits of that demand. I bought the first 4 city games because I was quite keen to get a copy of Hamburg. I have since actually, upon replaying Amsterdam, which is the retheme of Hamburg, I believe it's Amsterdam, found it to be quite dated. And actually, of the 4 that I acquired, I think this is the one that I like the most. Okay. Maybe I'll get in trouble for that. I don't know. But I was not a big fan of Marrakesh. I actually made a video about it. And I am a much bigger fan of, if we're talking about sort of, Steffenfeld's bigger, heavier, more complex games, I rate Civolution much higher than any of the city series that I've played. But Civolution's very heavy. But if you can find New York City for like a decent price, like a sort of a middleweight Euro type price, I'd say 30 to 40 pounds is probably reasonable. Definitely give it a shot. It's sort of, it's got that good sort of length where, it's probably about 60 minutes. I think it wants to be 4 players who are super cross. It'll do it in 60. If you've got some people that have never played before, it might go up to 90, but it's fine at that length. I do think it's got those Queen Games issues as well. Like, I mentioned earlier that there's this tableau of workers you can purchase, and it's a marketplace, and it's 5 tiers, right? Tier 1 to 5, with 5 being the most powerful workers. They're little tiles that you take into your play area, and they give you powers. And then the money you acquire, you need that to turn them on. So again, a lot of the actions you take in this game are like a 2-step process. Like you have to get the skyscrapers and then put them out. You have to hire the workers and then give them $1 to turn them on. And then you keep needing money to turn them on again. But nowhere in the rule book, anywhere, does it tell you when you refresh the market. So like if multiple people take the higher staff action, are they replaced immediately? At the end of the round, during the cleanup phase? When are they refreshed? By the way, it's at the end of the hire workers action. So once everyone's completed their bid for that action, you refresh the market. But it doesn't say that anywhere in the rules. Thanks, Queen. You charged an enormous amount of money for this and just left that out. But the game's good.
Yeah. Well,
it's pleasant.
I'll keep an eye out for whatever they re-implement Amerigo as, Manila or...
Yeah, I don't suppose you know if they've actually committed to that. I kind of stopped paying attention to the city series.
No, I don't know definitively. They're all unconfirmed at this point.
I know they had a new one recently that's sort of new, but since I moved away from my London group who are very into Felds and the dry Euros, people up in my new gamer groups are less au fait with them. I've still got my copy of Amerigo. I really like it. So
Chichinit says a new one out very soon, I think, and Valencia re-implements Strasbourg later this year.
I have not played Strasbourg.
Not so the rest of the games, I've played a whole bunch of games, but things we've maybe talked about before. So Harmonies, Endeavour Deep Sea, played another game of Bus, it was really good, played Castles of Burgundy, all games kind of people know. But I have been
glad to hear that you played Bus again and
had a really good
time with it. Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? It's so good.
Yeah, it was good. The other games we've been playing are Board Game Arena. Loads of things have come out. And so just kind of working my way through some of those. So Azul is a fun game, been out for a little while now. Very popular, super easy to teach, enough depth and strategy, and arguably best at 2, or at least the experience at 2 is very strong for what you are getting.
I like Azul at any count, actually.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it has an optimal count.
But I'd say the 2-player game is different from the 4-player game, for example.
It's more cutthroat. It's
yes.
more ruthless at 2 because, you will benefit. You can very directly target the other player, and it's as beneficial to sabotage them as it is to help yourself.
Agreed. But they have created Azul Duel. So this is Next Move Games, Michael Kiesling, both of which Azul. The artist on this one's Meva de Silva, who did Harmonies and Deus. And Azul is fine. Good, fine to good. This game is also Azul. Ergo is also fine. But they do add in a couple of bits and pieces which make the game more complex for not a lot of reward. And the game itself, whilst marketed as being 2-player, the people were quick to note there's no reason this wouldn't work at higher player counts, except the guys at Next Move Games were like, well, it was too slow at higher player counts.
Right.
And so it's like, yes, I could see that because you've just added in a whole bunch of extra steps that aren't particularly fun. So the additional things you can do in this game are your grid, your board, where you're placing your tiles after collecting them, starts blank. It ends up having a grid, which is 2, 4, 6, 8. I want to say you end up with a 10 by 10 grid. No.
Okay.
Maybe
I think
an 8 by 8 grid.
Azul's 5 by 5, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think you end up with an 8 by 8 grid on this one, because you've drafted 4 by 4 or 2 by 2 tiles, which you then place into your 4 by 4 grid. Oh, wait, that's it. You start with 1, and then 4 of the 5 rounds, you draft these bits to put your tiles on. So the additional 8. So it's a 3 by 3 grid, and each space in that grid contains a 2 by 2 tile. So you end up with a 6 by 6 total area for placing your tiles. Again, even just explaining it's
yeah, I'm
exhausting.
going a little cross-eyed trying to visualize it.
Yeah, right. And some of these spaces will be wild, some will be blank, and the others will have a colour. Fine. Then the factories, you are, when you take the tiles, any that are left, you stack into a single pile in the order of your choosing. And then players can either take from the factories or take the top from these piles, all the colours that match. And there's one big tile, there's one big factory where you can see all the different spare tiles. Again, don't know why. And additionally, so you must take 2 of these, you must take 2 tiles to build the place where you're putting tiles. I can't keep calling them all tiles. You take, you build your board, you must take 2 actions to take 2 of those. In addition, you must take 2 actions to take some of the tokens that go on the bottom of these stacks. And then the number of actions you get for drafting the actual tiles depends on the time frame when you've just on the timing and what's available and what's on the top, right? So there's never any really good reason to take your bonus tiles or your board tiles before having drafted all your normal tiles, because the other players can't take them, and you have to do it before the round ends. So it's not like the round can end before it's done. So everybody just clamours for, well, everybody, there's only 2 players. So you clamour for as many tiles as you can get initially, and then people shot about on getting the others. And otherwise it's Azul. Like, it's just Azul. You're putting them out and you're collecting. It goes to 6 now instead of 5 along. You can use the bonus tiles as 2 halves to make an extra tile if you need it. Cool. It's totally unnecessary.
I can't think of a sort of a less inspiring statement than this is a dueling game because there's too much downtime with more players.
Correct.
Like, if it's a dueling game, I expect compelling head-to-head gameplay, not the exclusion of higher counts because it's too long otherwise.
Yeah. It is. So I've played most of the Azul games, like Summer Pavilion, Stained Glass of Sintra. Is that one of them?
Yep, that is one.
What's the other one? I can't remember. I played most of them.
Queen's Garden?
Queen's Garden.
Isn't that one?
I want to say one of them was pretty good. I think maybe... I can't remember which one.
So I've played Azul and I've played Summer
Pavilion.
Pavilion, I think. I confuse it with the Queen's Garden, but I believe I played Summer Pavilion. But also, Chris Britton, who contributes to the show, has played a lot of Azul and has played all of the Azuls. And we did cover it on Ready Steady Played. So if you find the one we did where we talk about Azul, you can hear all of Chris's thoughts on what the best version of Azul is.
Nice. Yeah, Stained Glass, didn't like. Summer Pavilion, I did like. Is that the one I like? Or Queen's Garden? What's the one I like? Summer Pavilion. Summer Pavilion's the only other one I might want to play.
I like the one where it's chocolate.
But that's just Azul. It just happens to be.
Yeah, but it's
brown.
chocolate now, Barry.
It's the same game.
Yeah, but chocolate.
And they still have blank tiles, right? It's white chocolate, not just white.
The pieces look edible, though.
Yeah.
And you could feasibly get replacement pieces that are edible. Actually, why haven't they made an actual chocolate Azul?
You sometimes get that around Christmas, right?
It.
You get chocolate Monopoly and chocolate
Yahtzee
and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly. There's a market for chocolate Monopoly. Why can't there be chocolate Azul?
Anyway, I played it. Yeah. It's there.
There we go. If you only play Azul at 2 and you've played it to death, then why not come and find this one that offers a few extra mechanisms?
Yeah.
You can also try it on BGA, I guess?
Yeah,
or did you play this one?
Play on BGA. Definitely play this before you buy it. Like, it is fine. It is Azul. But it's just, extra steps that are unnecessary. Anyway, you'll have to edit me scowling the whole way through that review.
That is the review.
Yeah, just a picture of my face. Just it's there.
More content.
Yeah. And actually, if we're going for this already, there's another couple of games on Board Game Arena that fall into the same category. One of which is Mythicals. So this is a newish game from Repos Productions, I think. Designed by Alexis Allard and Joan Dufour. And the artist is Marina Kudry, who did Perspectives Blue and Dixit, and actually we spoke about last week again. The more I look at artists, the more I realise, they're often the same artists on a lot of the games that I play and like. Mythicals is another 2-player game, head-to-head, where there are 4 colours of cards, purple, blue, red and green. I think that's right. Numbered 1 through 5 with a wild card as well. You're collecting sets either by revealing 3 cards from the top of the deck and taking all the cards of the same colour to your tableau, or by taking all the cards, which are then discarded if you don't take them, to their appropriate column and adding those to your tableau for set collection. The interesting part of that is if all the numbers are there twice, so 1 through 5 and wild twice. If you take a card which you already have, you must give it to your opponent. So if I have purple 1, I take the 3, 5, and 1 of purples, I must give you the 1. So then you have the 1. And
okay, so you give me the one that you had in your hand to take more purples.
Correct. I can't have it's all open, by the way. You know what cards I have.
Right.
So you can't have 2 of the same color and number at the same time. And the aim of the game is to collect runs, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which you'll then cash in after taking cards, if you can, for the points. So if you've got a run of 1, 2, 3, then you can take the 2-pointer. And if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, you can take the 4-pointer, and then the 7-pointer, 10-pointer. Or the 13-pointer if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and the wild. And that is it. Almost. When you take a tile, you also then get the ability to either lock a tile, which means no additional points can be added to it, or add up to 2 additional points to a different tile that's not yet been claimed or locked. And then it's your opponent's go. So I've cashed in my 1, 2, 3 blue. I've claimed the 3 in a row blue tile, and then I've put 2 additional points on the run of 4 purple, because I already have 1, 2, 4, and I think I can maybe get the 3 before my opponent. And end of the game, when you flip over the Dawn card from the draw deck, which is in the bottom 10 or something, game ends immediately after that turn, and then you add up the points that you've got, both the points on your tiles and the extra points you've got from putting the points on them, and add them up. Whoever's got the most points wins. The end.
So this is a 2-player only game, and I'm just looking at the image here on BGG, and I can see that all the different suits have mythical creatures on them, which makes sense. The art's really appealing.
The art is very appealing.
I really like it. I can see that within each suit, they've got a different piece of art for each number, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of cool art in there. This looks like less good Lost Cities.
This is... Yeah, it's comparable-ish feel. There's no... Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Okay.
Like, it's just... to be fair, right? So I played it... I played it knowing what I was going into it. Taught the game, played it. So, yeah. Then played it another 2 times back to back. Because it is 5 minutes to play on Board Game Arena. I don't know if I can be bothered shuffling, putting the tiles back out, taking the little tokens off again, doing it in real life. But it wasn't... Of all the games I've ever played, this is one of them. Like, there's nothing memorable about it. There's no clever plays to be made. You're drawing 3 cards off the top of the deck blind, or you're taking from the discard, like all the color from the discard. There was a couple of decisions where, like, well, I can't let you have that, because then you'll get the 5 purple or whatever. So I'll take it just to have it, but then you could always just draw another 5 purple. I don't know. It was a game. It was... How much is it? That's good.
Well, it feels curious to me that it is open-handed, so you can see what your opponent's collecting, you can see what they're doing. There's not a whole lot you can really do to stop them, I guess, other than hang on to the cards that you think they might want.
Yeah. The layers of strategy can only really be, right, I'm going digging to end the game because I'm winning, I'm going to. It's fairly obvious whether you want to lock a tile or just add to tiles that you're going to win, because sure, you can lock your opponent's tile that they're going to take next turn, but they're going to take it before they put any tokens on it. So why would you bother locking it just for them to take it anyway? I don't know. It exists. And then finally, in my trilogy of these are games, is KADO or KADO. This is by Lumberjack Studios and designed by Antoine Bauza, who's done loads of things, including Seven Wonders. And the artist on this one is Manu Gorobe, who's done a few things. KADO is a baby game for babies. In fact, what would even be the weight on this one? I'm going to guess sub 2, 1. It is a 1. In this game, you are... I'll just explain for 3 players. Let's say there's 3 players. You're going to draw a card from the deck, and on this card will be one of 5 different gift types: a sock, a teddy bear, a candy cane, something along those lines. A Christmas gift, and one of 5 colours: blue, green, yellow, red, another colour, purple. And you are then going to take that card that you've drawn and you're going to give it to a player. Now that player could be you, could be another player. Fine. Once you've done that, you're going to get another card, do the same again. Then you get another card, do the same again. Everybody's got a present. Now, starting with the player on your left, they have the option of keeping what you've given them, or they can guess either, well, they guess the type of present you have and the colour of the present you have. And if either of them is correct, they will swap their present with your present.
Okay.
And if they get both of them, they'll get 2 bonus points. So if they guess a blue teddy bear and you had a blue teddy bear, they'll get your card and they will get 2 points. And then the third player is also going to get a chance to guess your present. Then you're going, once everybody's had a chance to guess and swap, you're going to put your card into your 4x3 tableau, and what you're trying, each card has a points value on it between 1 and 5, and you're trying to make rows of the same present and columns of the same colour. Once everybody's filled in their whole tableau, 4x3, add up your points. You'll get points for if all your ribbons are the same colour, you'll get the highest point card in that column. And if all your, well, add up the totals of all the ones in the same type in a row. Something like that. I can't remember. And that's it. Whoever's got the most points wins.
How are you supposed to know what other people have when you make your guesses?
Like if you've drawn a card and you've given it to somebody else, you've drawn a card and you've given it to somebody else, you've drawn a card, you have to have it.
Right.
So the only real thing is, well, actually, I don't want the card I've got. What I want is a yellow present. So I'm going to guess yellow present in case you've got it.
Right.
And then if they've got it, great. And if not, you just make do with what you've got.
Right, but it seems like if you were going to guess yellow teddy bear, you'd need to have some information, or else you're just taking a real punt.
Correct. But I guess you're looking at what they've got on their board. If they took the first card and they've kept it, fine. You've got some idea about what they might be trying to get. It's like, well, you've got 2 teddy bears, so I'm going to assume you've taken another teddy bear there.
Mm-hmm. But
then what you might do is give away a teddy bear. And then they're like, well, actually, I don't want to guess because then I'm giving you a teddy bear if I'm right. The strategy is not super deep.
Right.
So those were 3 games that are on Board Game Arena, and they're all fine to play on Board Game Arena. I would not want to own any of them. But you might. So make of that what you will, but give it a try.
Well, the good news is you can go and try them on Board Game Arena. Are they premium? Are they free? Do we know? We don't know.
I don't know.
Well, You might have to pay to play them, but the good news is Board Game Arena does have a big selection of games at this stage, and so if you do invest in the premium account, even for only a month, you do get access to lots of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And it will still be cheaper than buying them, probably, so you'll have a chance to try.
Right, get us back onto good games.
I've played one thing in real life other than New York City, which is, of course, an archaic game from 2022, although Rialto is actually much older than that. But I have played something brand new. It's called Moon Colony Bloodbath. And this is published by Rio Grande Games. So, of course, it came out about 4 weeks ago in America and has not yet come out in Europe. It is due out in Europe in 4 or 5 months whenever Rio Grande decide we deserve it. This is a 1 to 5 player game. It says here it takes 45 to 90 minutes. That is definitely dependent on player competence. More on that in a minute. It has a complexity weight rating of 2, which is probably pretty fair. It is a tableau builder. There are lots of cards, but they're very simple. This is designed by Donald X. Vaccarino, who you'll all know as the designer of Kingdom Builder and a little game called Dominion. The artist is France Vowinkle, who is a veteran of the industry, having done the art for the original Puerto Rico, as well as the original Quest for El Dorado, Beyond the Sun, and a bunch of Magic the Gathering cards, as well as 554 other credits. This is published by Rio Grande Games, and I played it twice at 5 players. I also note that this was a buddy of mine who'd bought it from the States. They'd ordered it because they're a big Donald Vaccarino fan. Fair enough. This first printing for the US edition did have a misprint. It affects the gameplay 0% effect, but one of the player boards are asymmetrical characters. That's wrong. I mean, they're all different characters. There's no asymmetry at all. It's all the same. But they're all different characters, and they have the character's face on the front and on the back, and one of the backs of one of the player boards has the wrong character. Fine. You're never going to look at it while
Unplayable.
You're playing anyway.
Trash.
That's it. Trash. Yeah. You're never going to look at it while you play it anyway. So, this I think it says on BGG that this is best at like 2 or 3, which is just wrong. I don't know who wrote that. This game is basically simultaneous, so the player count makes almost no odds. That may not be strictly true. So here's what you're doing in Moon Colony Bloodbath. You begin the game with a big old deck of cards, and you're going to be building a tableau. And that tableau is a moon colony that you're establishing on the moon. You are some mad scientist, or perhaps you're a normal scientist, or, you know, an Elon Musk, and you're building a colony on the moon, and everybody else is building a colony on the moon. People are going to come and live in that colony, except unfortunately it's all going to go wrong. And there's an event deck that tracks it all going wrong. And a round of the game is playing through the event deck. At the end of that event deck, you'll start a new round, and you'll just keep on going until everybody in some one player's colony is dead. And the minute somebody runs out of colonists and they're all dead, the game ends, and whoever has the most colonists remaining alive in their colony will be declared the winner. So this is kind of a wonderfully comedic game of, you know, everything slowly going wrong. Because the event deck starts out and it's really pleasant and largely just gives you actions and some benefits. And very, very quickly, the event deck becomes full of events that just murder people. And so the event deck is evolving over the course of the game. It just keeps getting more and more deadly. And so you've got a certain amount of time to build your colony, which is a tableau building thing. You're going into that big deck of cards I talked about earlier. You're picking them up, you're putting them into your hand, you're trying to play them into a tableau in front of you. And each of these cards has a settler count in it. And so you're building a tableau. The cards all interact with the actions you can take in the game. The actions are draw more cards, play the cards, get more colonists, get food and money to pay for colonists and cards. You know, so it's all pretty sort of basic tableau building stuff. But the cards, you know, will be doing things like, you know, when you do the take food action, you also get some colonists. You know, so there's tableau building, and if you can get all the cards that buff up the farm action, which gets you food, then, you know, just do the farm action over and over again, and you'll be, you know, raking in the dough. That's an ideal scenario. It's not going to manifest. There are more complex cards. I'm very much oversimplifying it for the purpose of the podcast, but at a weight rating of 2, you can imagine. I mean, to be fair, that's probably going to go up a little bit, but not much. Like it's not a super complex tableau builder. It makes some of the cards in Wingspan look complex, but it doesn't need to be, because each of the cards, in addition to having an effect, also has a colonist rating on it, the people that live there. And as this event deck goes up, it's going to start murdering colonists. You have a stack of colonist chips, and once you get through that stack, if you need to lose colonists, you'll have to sack off one of the cards. And you get the change back in colonist chips. So, 5 people die in the dome, it's worth 20, you get 15 chips back. And then the next few disasters will be absorbed by those chips that you have. This is a very brutal way of talking about people's death, but, it's bloodbath. So, the idea is you don't want you're going to get some amount of peaceful rounds to build up the tableau, and then you're going to have to start sacking cards off. And, ideally you want to sort of keep enough of the tableau in place that you can outpace the other players' deaths. And, if you're really, really good at tableau building, like one of the players at my table, who is a tableau building savant, then you will actually be able to not only outlast all the disasters, but continue to improve your tableau. The game's sort of chief attraction really is this evolving event deck. There are sort of various things that can go in there. There are sort of minor disaster cards that the game adds by default. There are also major disasters, which actually all take the form of robots that have gone haywire. And they just have worse effects than these minor disaster cards, or event cards, they're called. The robots going haywire is really destructive and difficult to cope with. And then there are also little income cards that you've got called perks, and if you can put them into the event deck, when you flip one of those over, you'll get some nice little benefit. So if you can get those in there, that'd be great. That might be the only reason why people complain about this, or say it's not complain, but observe it's better at 2 or 3, because I suppose if everyone's putting their perk cards in the event deck, it just takes marginally longer to parse. It's inconsequential, really. The game is 98% simultaneous, so the player count is really irrelevant. I think it's probably best at 4 or 5 because it's a funny game. I think if you were really trying to build a specific tableau, like you'd internalize the cards and you're like, okay, I need to get this card and this card and this card and this card in order to build a successful tableau, then yeah, you might enjoy a lower player count because you're less likely to miss out on the cards you want purely by dint of no one else is taking them. There's also no max hand size, so there's a strategy to just collecting lots and lots of cards in your hand to deny other players getting them, so that they will die faster than you, which is fair enough. But I think it is a very chaotic and random game, to be fair. So I think it would be best at 4 or 5 probably. But I don't mind. Like, I'd play it at any count, really. It's very quick to play. It depends entirely on how badly things go for someone. In the second game, we played it twice actually, and in the second game, I just picked like the worst cards, and then all the events that came out were the worst, and my colony just died so quickly. Everyone was just annihilated. The game was like 20 minutes long. And that was just really bad luck, and definitely not a player skill issue. But there are on the back of the rule book some tips and tricks to building a good moon colony. I didn't read the rule book, so I showed up and was taught and did not understand some of the more basic information I think that the other players had gleaned from reading the rule book, which did leave me on the back foot. Although in the first game, I did not die first, so at least I have that. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's a good time. I definitely play it again. I might even buy it when it comes out in Europe. I'm not rushing out to try and get the American copies. I think people have been really trying to get their hands on a copy because it's sort of in the wild now, and people have been playing it and enjoying it, and they're like, why is it not available? Don't worry, it will be. They've not released it in Europe yet, and they will do eventually. But yeah, no, it's if you like sort of tableau building, if you're not too not loss averse, if like losing stuff frustrates you, then you're going to hate this because most of it is building. Well, no, it's 30% building something, and then if you're really good, it's 100% building something, and if you're not really good, it's 70% losing the things you built.
It's interesting trend, right? So just what I was saying with Empire's End from last year, and then Nova Era, and this, where this sort of disaster tracking and actually the tableau destruction, or what you built up destruction elements seems to be more prevalent in some games than it has been in the past, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, and I mean, Empire's End is a really interesting one because that's basically no thanks with disasters and a tableau. But I do feel like someone looked at sort of, I don't know, it's like for years someone had been saying in development, like, oh no, we can't have players losing too much. Players hate losing stuff. And then someone was like, let's experiment with that. And now we've got a sort of a series of games where your stuff is just getting destroyed and you're trying not to lose out as much as everyone else.
I guess they saw how divisive Galaxy Trucker was. And
Yep, that's true. But I mean, Galaxy Trucker's still in print. I liked Moon Colony Bloodbath. I thought it was fun. I would play it more. I would like to see some more cards. It definitely feels like so the same player won both games, and it's the player who's very good at tableau building. So no surprise there. But I do feel like talking to that player after, they're like, well, there's this card and this card and this card, and I feel like if I got those cards, I'm pretty much set. So I do feel like, and they sort of pivoted their strategy a bit around what action they were sort of focusing on buffing, but they did indicate there were just some cards that were really good, and they would hunt, if they got those, they would definitely play them regardless of what other strategy they were pursuing. Okay. So I do feel like it could benefit maybe from a bit more, from either a bit more of a bigger deck of cards in both games. And to be fair, we're playing at max count. We did cycle the deck twice of cards. That's not a problem. In fact, I think to an extent it's expected. What's valuable at the start is not as valuable as what's later. Like at the start, you want these ramping up resource producing cards. In the later game, you just want the ones that come with lots and lots of people on, and you don't care if they do nothing. But I think also if there's this element of like some cards are just really, really good, then maybe more variety or diversity will sort of help manage that a bit. The other thing I observe is that everyone starts with a starting hand, and that's just randomly dealt. It would be interesting to do some kind of draft. There's no turn order, so you couldn't do, I don't know how you'd balance the drafting. Maybe you'd make pairs, people would draft pairs of cards, or sort of a snake draft, something like that. But the players at the table were like, there should be some setup to the opening hands, because there can be quite a lot of luck in there as well. And to be fair, there's not a lot of targeted player interaction. If you do something bad, typically what you're doing is putting a bad card into the event deck, and that just punishes literally everyone, including you. So it's just, you just know what it is, and you can maybe better mitigate the effects of it. Chances are the bad card was put into the deck by some beneficial card you've played in front of yourself. So you've already got the benefits. Everyone else is going to get punished equally. So it's not like you can target one player. The only way you could do it is if you see a player that's doing a specific strategy, like bumping up their farm action, and you start hanging on to all of the cards that benefit farms in your hand. Again, that's really unlikely to happen because you need to be like tableau building savant to actually do that. There was only one player at the table really that had a strong enough engine to consider hanging on to extra cards. Everyone else was just desperately trying to find some cards to play, So, I It's definitely really good fun. I would definitely recommend giving it a try. And I really, really liked how quick it was. I do feel like, to an extent, players had been complaining that, Dominion has a lot of downtime. There's a first player advantage that isn't at all mitigated, and Donald Vaccarino's like, hold my beer. I'm going in. All right. It's simultaneous and there's no turn order. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I'll definitely be picking up a copy of this when it comes out in Europe, I think.
Nice.
And it's got the art's really kitsch as well. It's that sort of 50 retro sci-fi, 1950s retro sci-fi.
Cool. Well, just one more from me, and this was sort of the save from all the new games playing on Board Game Arena, and that is Khiva. I presume that's how you pronounce it, but this is published by The Flying Games, designed by Johannes Guppy, who did Far Away, and Guillaume Scholz, who's only done this. The artist in this one is Camille Chaussee, who also did a few things, but Via Magica, one of the things I played that she'd done art on before. And Khiva is a multiplayer tug of war game. So I spoke last podcast about Zenith being a tug of war game, and I think we spoke about another tug of war game in there, but they were 2 players. This one works quite well at higher player counts, but can still work at 2 players as well. And Khiva is a game where you are a merchant, and there are 5, I want to say camels or elephants, I think they're camels, each of which has a magic lamp on top of it worth a various number of points, come in 5 colours, white, blue, green, red, black, in that order. That'll become important in a minute. And they all start in the middle of the board, where you've got 5 spaces or 6 spaces to get across to
your palace.
Yeah, your palace. More palacey than castle, right? And so you're trying to get the camels there, and along the way there's things to pick up like gems, carpets, salt, to collect riches to your castle by getting the camels all the way along, or you get point stuff for them when they stop off. So the way the game works is you've got a handful of cards which are coloured matching the camels, numbered 1 through 5. So each player has this. You are going to play a card, and you're going to pass a card to your neighbours. And then the cards are going to resolve. So the way cards resolve is they'll always activate in colour order: white, blue, green, red, black. If you play 1 white and somebody plays 5 white, you will get to move the white camel 1 space towards you, even if it's on the opposing side of the board, moves 1 space towards you. And the player who played the 5 would get 1 ruby in compensation, but they would not get to move the camel. Right? So then where your camel stops, if it stops on rubies, you earn those rubies. If it stops on a carpet, you get to draw a carpet and put it in front of you. You've not yet earned it until a camel of that colour makes it to your palace. And if you stop in front of salt, which is just basically a bunch of tokens scoring 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can spend 3 rubies to get that top salt token. So the different... each camel's worth points based on the magic lamp on top of it. I don't know if the lamps are magic, but they're definitely lamps. And when you get a camel all the way over to you, you will earn that lamp. The camel will go back to the middle. If you have any carpets that match that camel's colour, you will at that point bank them. And then end of the game, once there's no more lamps to put on camels, add up all the points for everything you got for your salt, your carpets, your lamps, your rubies, and whoever's got the most points wins. Now, the important part of the game is when you're moving a camel, not only does this low to high resolution thing matter, but you don't count spaces that already have camels. So if you've got, particularly in a 2-player game, you can have it sort of stacked up. So you've got like maybe a couple of camels on your side and the white camels on the other player's side, but you fairly sure they don't have a white. So you play your 5 white and you can get that camel all the way over to your side because the blue and the green aren't going to activate until after the white one's activated. So there is a little
jump over the others.
Yeah, jump. So you can chain them. You can also pay rubies to move them an additional space or two. And it just works. Like, it's not the most complicated game. In fact, I'm looking at here, it's 1.29. And the only reason it's probably that high is because of the card resolution order and the amount of different ways to score points. Those 4 different ways to score points all matter. And balancing what's good and what's bad is tricky. But because the tug of war always goes through this central spot, then as you're pulling a camel towards you, somebody's pulling it back towards them, and then it's getting pulled back towards another player. You may think you're never going to score, but you never have to move really further than you do in a 2-player game, right? Because it's always just back to the middle and then it's effectively reset, then towards you. But higher player counts can make that more difficult. You need to kind of set up having low cards in your hand, so maybe you're passing high cards to your opponents, and then you're able to undercut them with your camel action to get them. And it's fun. It works fine. It's not the most thrilling of games, I wouldn't say, but solid enough. And certainly compared to even Azul, which is a fine game, I'd rather probably play this than any of the others that I've mentioned on Board Game Arena this podcast.
And this one's on BGA as well.
It's on BGA, yeah. Just they were released sort of day after day after day after day. There's one more, Echo, EKKO, that I've not had a chance to play yet, but I think they were just like released back to back to back to back to back on Board Game Arena into at least beta, if not proper. And so managed to get games in to play them all.
So you can always go and try that if it's available. I don't suppose Echo's a arcane theme game, League of Legends theme game.
Unrelated. It is a game from last year, which is a card shedding game, I want to say. And I think it might be real time in real life. Ooh. So a little bit like Uno, you're playing. So if somebody plays 0-7 and you have 70, you can slap 70 down because it's the mirror of the card that's just been played. Otherwise, you have to play a higher or lower number. I can't remember what way it works. But and if you can't play, you draw. So a little bit like Uno as a card shedding game. So it's just another family weight game. Also from Flying Games, who published Khiva.
All right. Well, there you go. So if you're only going to try one game on BGA this month, try Khiva.
Agreed.
Very good. Well, I think that about wraps it up for podcast 23. What do you got planned for the future, Barry?
So this week we have. Oh, actually, I can't say too much because Sky even work on Friday. But I doubt they're listening to the podcast anyway. So, having a Bueller Day on Friday, we are going to be playing probably Finspan and 5-player Chaos in the Old World.
Yeah, I spotted that in the show notes. I was going to say, Chaos in the Old World don't play 5.
Does with the Horned Rat.
Does it? Does it?
Uh-huh.
I did not know you could use the Horned Rat to go up to 5. I've only ever used it as a substitute.
Nah, I wouldn't. You can't really substitute it. I mean, you can.
We always substituted out to Tzeentch because everyone thinks they're underpowered.
Tzeentch won the last 2 games we played, so maybe we're just not good at it.
Or maybe my data is bad. To be revisited.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll bring it to Airecon and then we can have a chat about Chaos in the Old World. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure we can get 5 players at Airecon.
Oh, definitely. People would love to play it. I'm just trying to sleeve my games, but I'm also going to be playing with part of the new cards and part of the old cards, but the backs are different for the player powers. So I'm trying to find mini American card sleeves that are opaque.
I hadn't noticed the backs were different.
Yeah, like the new version. So the one that comes with a horned rat has a white border around the outside, whereas the base game cards do not. And so when that mixing and matching to try and balance everything out, you can see it doesn't matter too much apart from Slanesh, where you're only using 2 of the new cards. So you know that, and they're both the same, so you know what you're getting. The other ones are a reasonable mix. But that's maybe a step too far for some players.
Yeah, finding those mini sleeves with an opaque back will be difficult. God, I hadn't even noticed that. I'm gonna have to go check my set and see if I've just been totally oblivious.
Well,
for so long.
You won't notice if you're playing entirely with the new cards or entirely with the old cards. You won't know.
Right. So you're mixing and matching is an ad hoc thing to try and balance it.
Correct. Yeah. So some of the cards that don't do anything, get rid of them. Some of the cards that are potentially too strong, get rid of them. Mix and match.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe that's why I haven't noticed. I've only ever followed the standard setup and swapped them out wholesale.
But that's on the cards for me.
So what I'll try to do then is in the next episode, I will see if I've got an actual list of stuff set for Airecon. Let you all know what I'm planning to bring. If you've got any suggestions, let me know. Try and decide if I'm going to bring arcs or not. I would always bring arcs, but I'm conscious that I might be bringing too many just angry confrontational games and no cozy Euros. So got to think of what cozy Euro I could bring that everyone will enjoy. But in the meantime, the only thing I think is showing up soon is the production copy of Elder Scrolls.
That doesn't seem like a game you want to travel with, but
I don't think it's really a convention game. It's too long, and it also goes up to 4. Like if I'm going to be at the convention, 4 is like the basic count. More, please.
More.
Higher counts. I'm at the convention. Let's get everyone playing. That's my philosophy. Anyway, thanks everyone so much for coming and spending some time with us today talking about board games, and I hope you've learned about something new that you're excited to try. Do let us know what you are excited about. If you think there's something that we should be paying attention to, you can always reach out via the email, askgracecitypodcast@gmail.com, or by commenting on the YouTube video or the Spotify video. If you found this somewhere else, thanks for listening. And thanks also to all the patrons who support the show. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more board game stuff.
Until next time, bye.